Greetings, Louis, and welcome to another video. This is going to be a week meta or weekly deck local slash event report number three. This is my third week going to events with certain strategies throughout this format, and I'm trying to make this a weekly basis. Uh, I I'm not guaranteed to be doing this every single week, but so far I'm trying to make a track record of going each week by week, going to events and see how I can play it outright with my strategy or whatever strategies I try to fulfill. And this one is a little bit more different than the last two. The last two videos that I've done were just going to locals. This one involves not only going to locals, but going to a very prestigious event, which is the Tropical Island Challenge. For those who don't remember or are just newer to the channel, this is a series of tournaments that are held here in Puerto Rico. They do it every few seasons. This is the fourth one that they've done so far. I attended the second one and the third one. The first one was done like around December 2022, which was around Tournament and Chisu format. Uh, the second one was held in May 2023, which was right after this release of Cyberstorm Access. That's the one that I won. The third one was done around the time Duelist Nexus arrived. So if I'm not mistaken, it was August 2023. 23. Uh, and now this is the fourth one, which was on January 20th of 2024. Uh, so before I talk about the Tropical Island Challenge and how I did at the event, as you can see, I did make top 8. I even made it up to top 4. I'm going to talk about a little bit of how my deck choice led to that event and how did I predicate it towards where my practice. So if you saw the last metagame report, and if you haven't, I do encourage you a little bit to watch that one before this one, because there is going to be a bit of missing context involving like the strategy that I previously that I piloted. As you can see, there are two decks right here, and there are two piles right here. Uh, One deck I chose or I played like previously, and the other one was a change that I made or another test that I made throughout the week. So, uh, last week, uh, I piloted tier elements. I made second place at my locals, which was 5 rounds in Swiss. I ended up losing to fellow team member Gary Rosa. Um, so fellow EJ Gaming team member. He was piloting the Rescue Ace deck. So after I lost to the Rescue Ace strategy, I kind of wanted to like test out the waters, no pun intended, and see if this deck still had the ability to perform because I felt that the Rescue Ace matchup was just very like overwhelming. Uh and because most of my games, or at least most of my testing with that deck, was not really due to this deck breaking. It was due to the ceiling of that strategy being higher than this one, and I kind of wanted to test that theory. So I kind of wanted to try it out again. So on Wednesday night, I pretty much piloted this uh, tournament strategy, and I played against a few other decks, as well as Gary's Rescue Ace deck, and see if my hunch was correct on what I thought on Thursday, before Thursday, which was like on Sunday night after the locals event ended, and I made the previous deck report. So I'm going to show you the tier deck first. Uh, it's almost the same thing as the last one. I do highly encourage you the last one to for you to watch the last one because it has a lot more context, as I mentioned previously. But three Rhino Heart, three tier cash, um, the three other names, Visas, Samsara, that didn't change either. The three Ray Heart, um, the three Dangers, Mothman, Parasite. Uh, I tried the Shufflers this time. Um, Last time they were in the side deck. I'll get to that in a moment. So that's it for the monsters. So Pelarino, Scream, Goods, the two Rayphobias, the two Rivals, uh, Reborn Rhoda, the Triple Soliac, and Trivic Karma. So you're probably going to notice a few things. First things is there are no horse cards in here. I did play with the horse engine last time. I tried a lot of different things. Again, shoutouts to Gary. Shoutouts to EJ Gaming. Uh, one of the best teams. Like he not only did he accepted me like trying my strategy, he accepted me trying to tinker with the tier deck against this rescue strategy, and I tried out a bunch of different things. So one engine that I tried out, and I guess this shadow goes to Solemn YGO. So Solemn YGO is a British Yugi tuber. He well, I think he's British. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's from Scotland. I have to recheck, but basically, he did a video talking about everything you need to know about tier elements. I highly, highly recommend you watching that video if you get the chance. I'll probably post it in the description. But he talked about a lot of different engines that you can try in this deck. He brought up all of them, at least all of the ones I can think of. He brought up the Visas package. He brought up the Destiny Hero engine. He brought up like the Lunalight engine. He brought up like multitude of dangers. He brought up like different ratios of different cards. One engine that he brought up that caught my attention a lot was the Punk engine. So basically, the three teleports, two Almin, and one Diurno and one Foxytune. So this is a really really good alternative for those who do not own the Horus cards and just still want to play Hero Elements naturally. One thing that caught my attention and what I liked about this engine a lot is that there are no conflicting engines with the Visas engine. Pretty much everything that you were running for the Visa strategy, like for example, the Fusion Parasite, the Menacing Mantis, the Vampire Zombie Vampire, and like a few other things, pretty much intertwined both with the Visas engine and the Punk engine. So I had multiple ways of accessing the Mantis. If follow up for the last tier deck profile, I brought up how I never summoned Mantis on any tournament with the Visas engine. Mainly because one, I did not see Samsara enough times, and two, I just kept milling Fusion Parasite too early, which is it's just a luck factor. But I just kept getting to Fusion Parasite without even trying to access it like naturally, and it kind of overworked. It kind of like caught my attention because not only is this really a good another really good engine, but if you pair it with something like Fenrir and stuff like TLMS Castira, uh, it also gives you the access to Baron the floor, so you have insulation against hand traps as well as you trying to combo off. So on that regard, I felt like this engine was very strong. Uh, it is bad when it's milled, which is one thing that is not as contrasted to the Horus engine. The other thing as well is that the Horus engine is uh, good in later turns. Well, this engine is not. So that's another caveat to take note of when you're playing like something like this. But throughout testing, I felt like this engine was ideal. I had little to no qualms with it. Now let's go talk about what happened throughout testing. So I faced against Kashtira, which is naturally a bad matchup. I faced Rescue Ace. I faced the Fire King Tri Brigade deck. And I think those are the main decks the main strategies that I faced against. Um, in the past, I already faced against Dinosaurs, Orchist, Dark World, Branda Chimera. So throughout testing, I noticed a few couple different things, and this is just one of the main caveats to tournaments is that w- the first thing I'm thankful for is that I hardly didn't brick. Like I still stand by the Visas engine over like Destiny Heroes and over like the Beatrice combos and like the other lines. And the main reason for that is because you brick a lot less and you still get to your engine and you have other ways to combat like natural threats against your elements. Like stuff like Abyss Dweller is hurts you a lot less. Like you don't have to worry about like specific end boards. You don't have to worry about like not milling the right cards too early, just by accessing your engine. Uh, However, without the Destiny Hero package and without Beatrice, uh, and without like the Horus engine, I guess, uh, the deck was just naturally fairly weak against other people's strategies because Tier Element's strategy as a whole involves like Kaleido Heart, Soliac, and a few other things. I'm not showing the extra deck. The extra deck is pretty much the same extra deck as the last profile, but after like a couple of games, I just noticed like Tier Elements was just naturally fairly weak for the standards that I tried to predicate this towards. I lost every single game against Rescue Ace. I lost almost every game against Fire King Tri Brigade. Like the games that I did win are the games where either I went first and they didn't open any interruptions, or the games where they just naturally bricked. And I didn't want that to be a factor for like my victories throughout any tournaments. So I arrived at the conclusion on Thursday morning. Oh, Thursday morning. Yeah, Thursday morning. And I'm going to give a mass shout out to a couple of people. The one shout out I'm going to give is to Jorge Flores. He lent me like the tiramisu stuff that I was missing. Another shout out goes to Juan Ortiz. He also lent me pretty much almost the entire tournament deck. Uh, and not only did he lend me a tournament deck, he also lent me the other deck that I'm going to show you. So big, massive shout outs to him. So on Thursday morning, I spoke to Juan Ortiz and I told him like, uh, I need to change. Like I cannot play tournaments anymore. And he pretty much was like, uh, I told you, I already told you, like, that deck is like not as powerful as it is anymore. And I wholeheartedly agree. I still think Teotihuacan is very, very, very strong. Like under the right circumstances, like transaction rollback is something really powerful for the deck. I still think that the Visa strategy with 17 traps is like a very, very strong one strategy. Uh, Another thing to note is like I was playing this before, right at the release of Mesa Millennia, so I did not own any. I did not own like uh, anything from that set as of yet. So that's one factor to bring up. Uh, since I had no access to rollback, I did not like wanted to risk playing the tier deck at its current base form. So I kind of needed another strategy, and I pretty much was like trying to like read well into the metagame, and my consensus towards my next deck choice is I wanted to play a good amount of non-engine, but at the same time I wanted my deck to be resilient to a good amount of non-engine. Um, we're right now in a format where hand traps are in a lot of people's decks. Board breakers are not good enough because rescue ace is still a very popular strategy. Uh, Labyrinth is another very popular strategy. They just don't naturally lose to board breakers. Um, so I just reading the room and noticing that like hand traps are going to be in a lot of people's decks. I kind of want to play a strategy that just naturally would do very very well even against the more popular hand traps. But at the same time, had enough engine space so I can fit like not a lot of hand traps or fit in a lot of non-engine. And I had three choices. Choice number one was Kashtira. Choice number two was Vanquish Soul. And choice number three is the deck that is right here in this pile. I'm going to talk about the other two choices first because as you can see, I already arrived at a conclusion. I'm not playing neither Kashtira nor Vanquish Soul. Uh, with Vanquish Soul, I just didn't have access to the cards like right away. But and the other thing about Vanquish Soul is that it has a very rough Fire King matchup, and I feel like Fire King is like one of the more natural decks that are popular in the format. So well, under that conclusion, I just felt like yes, Vanquish Soul was probably not going to be the most right fit. Uh, the deck is kind of fragile if you're not going first, if you don't draw the right hand traps as well. Like the deck only has realistically like six starters. So uh, you are more prone to breaking than not in that deck just because of the sheer amount of non-engine without not many one card starters in that strategy. So that's scrapped as one option. Second option was Kashtira. I feel like Kashtira is really good in a metagame like this one. Like that deck can fit in a good amount of hand traps. It can play Dimension Shifter. Same with Vanquish Soul. I feel like any deck that can play Shifter this format is naturally going to be a right fit under the right circumstances. Flow Underace is a very iffy one, but I'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, my issue with Kashtira is that it's a deck that can naturally brick. Like if you don't play the right cards or you just play like a weird combination of consistency cards. Like I seen people like mixing prosperity with desires. Just to give one example, I just feel like in a really long tournament with at least 5 to 9 rounds, you are going to brick and you are going to lose more games than not due to bricking. And I didn't want to be under that scope. It's also a deck that uh, is very weird into matchups that like can just capitalize on you not using your extra deck. Uh, the deck is still weak to talents, which is a very popular card in the format. Baguska is another card that just outright like ends your turn if you don't play the right cards. Uh, Trying to think about something else. Like I just felt like Castillo was a very weird pick, even though it was a really strong pick if you have enough practice with it. So now I'm going with my third choice. So choice number three, and this is the choice that I made at the last moment on Thursday, is Centurion. Um, so I guess I'll talk about Centurion a little bit before I showcase the deck profile, and then I'll talk about my experience with Centurion as a whole. This is a transition now to like just talking about Centurion and my tournament experience with it because I did take this to three tournaments, like right after Thursday. So I arrived at the conclusion for Centurion because it plays a good amount of non-engine. It plays really well into non-engine. Uh, like the most natural blowouts for this deck are not really popular right now. Uh, and this deck pretty much has a very strong win condition, and it also can do really well in the grind game, which is very important. Not many people are knowledgeable on how to face this deck, and that did happen throughout the three tournaments that I played. Like a lot of people just naturally didn't knew what to do against certain cards. I also had a little bit of sack factor in this deck, and that just made it like a very good choice in theory. So on Thursday afternoon, I picked up this deck, and one of the cards that I was playing, I was pretty much playing a cookie cutter list that I saw like from a few regionals. I played Fenrir in the main deck. I played Super Polymerization as well. Like, just a spoiler alert, those cards are not in here. Like, I naturally played Fenrir. I naturally played Super Polymerization. I played a plethora of like hand traps. I played like just a standard build, and what ended up happening was that so on Thursday's list, it was I think a 41 card list, and it played Fenrir and Super Poly. Uh, the Super Polymerization was dead. I faced almost no matchups where that card was relevant at all. Um, that's not to say it's a bad pick. I think 90% of Centurion lists are playing Super Poly. I still think it's a really strong card if you can fit your extra deck like very well and you just think that it's a good fit for you. I don't think it's incorrect. Um, but the Thursday build, uh, take note, it was still like it was post Mace of Millennia, but like literally the set just came out the same day, so not many people had access to like consistency cards like Bonfire, for example, that actually could fit in this deck. I will talk about Bonfire in a moment as well, like late after I show you a list. But so I played at Titan Games. It was 6 rounds of Swiss, 34 players. My ending record was X2, and I finished ninth place, which got me a little bit shy of top 8, which for me is perfectly fine because it was the very first time me even piloting this deck, an actual like duel, let alone an actual tournament. Um, and that already made it very good, like showcase wise, because my two losses was naturally to bricking. Like I lost once against Rescue Ace and I lost once against Brand the Chimera, and both duels I just bricked and like unplayable. And And I felt like after that event on Titan Games, where I ended up X2, I wanted to make a few last minute choices. So I just knew that in order for me to be more consistent with the deck, I just needed to cut a few natural cards. I cut the Super Polys. I kept Fenrir for a little brief moment. And then I played Wheat Box, which is another locals that I go to. That was on Friday night. And that was 5 rounds of Swiss, uh, 19 players. But despite the low player count, it had really good players. Like half the gaming team was there. Uh, People from Money Glitch, people from the Aces group, people from like the Extenders. Shouts to all of them. Um, like it had one or two really good players. It had some people from Got Milk Gaming team as well, another really strong team. So despite the low player count, it had a really good player base, and I got to play against really good players. And I ended up undefeated on the tournament. I finished 5-0. I faced two rescue aces. I faced a Kashtira, a pure Kashtira. I faced Runic for Hire, the Runic for Hire sprite deck, and I think, and I faced Branded Chimera, and I just ended up defeating all of them. The hardest game, the hardest match, by far, were one of the two Rescue Ace games. Charles Diego Rodriguez, Battle 12, and the Branded Chimera match. Charles to Derek Morales. And like those two were really tough matchups, and but I naturally managed to grind them both out. Uh, I did get a little bit lucky in one or two games, but uh, after the conclusion of that tournament and speaking to a few of the like fellow team members and speaking to other players that I faced against as well, and people that were just naturally knowledgeable about the deck, um, we arrived at the conclusion that uh, some cards just weren't a natural fit. Like for example, Kashtira Fenrir was just very win more. I just felt like it only contributed to good hands being better, and not like the lesser good hands being okay. But I ended up just cutting Fenrir entirely. Uh, and another thing that I did throughout the event was I mained Droll and Logbird. After testing, Droll is no longer in the main deck; it's in my side deck. Uh, and I just played like another engine outright, and that leads up to the Deadman Kingdom tournament. So I'm going to show you a list, and then I'll explain what happened at the 1K event because, as you can see, I have this map right here. So I did top. So the list goes as follows: 3 Primera, 3 Trudea, 1 Emeth, triple I'm Steady, 1 Happy, Magnum Durasworm, Fed Veiler, DD Crow, Ash Blossom. That's it for monsters. I think there's 25 if I'm not mistaken. I'll do the count later. It's 41 cards. Triple Emblema, triple Stand Up, Bonds, Terraforming, double Kinsark, triple talents, called by triple imperm, Centur-ION Phalanx. That's it for the main deck. Like I said, 41 cards. X-Pack, Artemis, SP, Dark, BLS, 38, 68, Vampire, Crisis, Double Legatia, Calamity Hot Red, Crimson and Hot Red, Baron, Angel, Scarlet. Before I talk about the side deck, I'll talk about the main deck and what led me to the decision of how I crafted the main deck in the first place. So I have 15 hand traps, and yes, I am counting the bestials, and 3 talents, which puts me at a total of 18 non-engine, while just having like pretty much 13 starters in the main deck, including terraforming. So the deck overperformed. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I think this deck was very amazing at what it did. Uh, Not a lot of people knew how to tackle my strategy. Um, like this deck is not weak to draw. It's not weak to any hand trap as long as you have any extender. Like it does have a few choke points, but those choke points are pretty much predicated towards like you already like not having the most ideal hands with any extender. Like for example, just stopping the normal summons and not having anything else that can pair alongside them can end up like you uh, like passing the turn. However, there is a few natural things that I could do in this deck that just made it very playable. I guess I'll start with the Horus engine. So, like after Friday, I arrived at a conclusion where the Horus engine, despite it not being as popular in many Centurion lists, is still just very strong at what it does. Like one really big upside about Horuses is that in a simplified game state where you're trading hand traps with your opponent and you're just entering the grind game, these cards are just going to like make sure that you will stay in the game. Like King Sarcophagus is a very ridiculous card, and the 41st card was the second Sarcophagus, and I do not regret that choice because I did open Sarcophagus a lot. I even drew into the second one as a sixth card uh, multiple times, which is a little bit unfortunate because I have drawn these alongside Imseti. But just having an extra copy of Sarcophagus was very good because it meant that as soon as they get rid of the first one, they have to worry about the second one. And you can just use one Sarcophagus to just interrupt them. I mean, to force their interruptions. Because if you already have Horuses in your graveyard, this card just becomes a natural threat for your opponent because they know that as soon as they don't deal with this, they have to deal with these. And if they try to deal with anything on your board, well, these cards are like in presence, like they are in a very bad spot. Which is another reason why I really like the Horus cards. Like a lot of people are tunnel visioned into thinking that you can just out the Centurion resources, and you don't have to worry about like stuff like Calamity Lock, etc. But if you keep your Horus monsters on board, you're putting your opponent on the situation where they either have the out and they get punished because of the Horus cards, or they don't play into the Horus cards, but they play into your win condition of your deck, and that's already like at the point of them losing. Another engine that I played that I don't regret at all is the three Bestials. I think the Bestials overperformed. I think I won a lot of games just by summoning Druid's Worm and just like using stand up to make Chaos Angel or Baron with the Druid's Worm. That did happen, like one or two times. I faced Labyrinth. I faced Orchest. I faced the Mirror Match. Uh, and the Centurion Mirror Match, I pretty much have the edge because I had these cards in my main deck while they did not. So this was just a very natural fit. Uh, the other thing that prompted me to play Bestials is the fact that I do play enough Light and Darks, and that's where the DD Crow comes in. DD Crow was literally my last hand trap decision for this deck. I was debating on whether or not to play Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. The number one reason for DD Crow is because it is a dark monster for a bestial monster. And it's also a dark monster for the Dark Charmer as well. Not only that, but like it also helps against the purely matchup, which is one matchup that I don't have fully covered. I want to cover as many decks as possible with this strategy, and although I did not face purely at all, like throughout these three tournaments, I still wanted to respect the matchup and just make sure that I had enough cards for it. And I do not regret these choices at all. I think these cards overperformed. They did like very well for like what I wanted them to do. Um, I guess one other explanation is like I already spoke about not super poly. Uh, so why no bonfire? So for people already know that bonfire is another consistency card for this deck because it's another one card starter. It gets you to Trudea, and Trudea just pretty much like starts your engine entirely. So the number one reason I did not play bonfire in this deck is because this deck is already really strong into Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird really doesn't hurt you at all, and I kind of wanted to keep it that way. Like as soon as you play bonfire, like you're pretty much insulated from Droll and Lockbird, and like yes, you are breaking a lot less, and yes, you still have a play. You still have like playable stuff in your engine. Like you can still summon Trudea, spawn it back to a spawn trap zone, like put Primera, and if you have like stand up Centurion, you can play on your opponent's turn. Or if you just have a natural other extenders, you can just play that way. But I did not want to be at that situation. I just wanted to like make sure that whatever card I'm playing that can just like start my Centurion plays, just follow through and just have almost every hand playable under almost any hand trap that they make against me. If my opponent has double hand trap and they just stop me like at one specific point, then that's very specific scenarios, and not it does not always often happens. This deck has very like streamlined choke points that people are not really familiar with, so that already gives you a very strong edge. Like whenever I see somebody imperming my Primera and I have an extender, I'm pretty much in that point where I'm like, okay, so if you imprint Primera but open stand up, I still do the full Centurion combo. The only difference is I did not add a card. Um, whether whether it's if you imperm the Legatia, which is the Synchro monster, like you're stopping both the draw from the Legatia and also the primary play, which is to spawn a monster uh, in the end phase. And that's where Centurion Bonds comes with. So not every Centurion listed plays Bonds, but I feel like Bonds is really really strong because Bonds makes it so you don't lose to the cards you are naturally weak to if you people know the choke points of your strategy. Like if you if they end up letting Primera resolve because of what I just explained with Imperm, then that gives you the avenue to just search bonds in the off chance you do get impermed. And if you do not get impermed on Legatia, and you still kept the bonds, that's perfectly fine because it means that bonds is just going to become your follow up for next turn guaranteed after you resolve your full Centurion combo. Um, Another thing to note is not many people max out on talents. I maxed it out entirely. I already knew that we're in a hand trap heavy format, so talents was going to be less dead than not. Um, I did brick on this twice. Uh, One of the games that I bricked on it was my game two of top four, which you know was pretty unfortunate. But outside of this, this card overperformed. I think talents did. It's very exceptional. I did not draw into call by too much. My opponents did open call by a lot, which was a little bit disheartening considering I'm playing like 15 hand traps. And so, why am I not maining Droll and Lockbird? I guess I should show the rest of the side deck first before I get to that conclusion. So, the side deck is uh, triple Droll, triple Lancia, triple deck lockdown, triple Cosmic, and three Solemn Judgment. So, um, I'll get these two out of the way. I made a video talking about these two. Feel free to check it out. It is a very bit of a lengthy video. All the explanation behind these two cards are in that video. Um, that being said, these cards, I do not regret these choices. I think these two cards were a very good natural fit in my deck. Um, Cosmic, I think it's no brainer. I think this card should be in your main or side deck somewhere. It does actually come up not only against like the mirror match, but against like Fire Kings, against Rescue Ace, against like Orchest variants, just because this Dingirsu does not protect you from this. Like against Labyrinth, this card is alright because basically you just make it so you just banish their welcome traps and they don't recur themselves back from the graveyard, which is a very very big deal, especially now since rollback is part of the equation. So why did I not main Droll and Lockbird? So after testing on Friday, I just arrived at the conclusion that every single deck that loses to Droll, at least one of the higher ceiling decks, will just lose to any combination of hand traps. Like naturally. Adding to that, there are just going to be some hand traps, like for example, Bestial Magnamut, that are just going to be awkward into Droll. And uh, I knew that Droll was going to be good overall, and I feel like if you're not maining this card, you should definitely cite it. And post Phantom Nightmare, this card should probably be highly in your priority list on your in the main deck because the meta will be slightly more different. However, for this specific event, I did not want to be at the risk of like not like resolving draw Lockbird enough times. One cool thing about draw Lockbird that did come up when I did main it was the fact that it's a spellcaster monster, so I can make Artemis with it. And making Artemis, it was really good fit because it gives you the bonus effects for SP Little Knight. But yeah, I pretty much just felt like Droll was going to be good at at some point, but not like at every single point. So the last card I want to talk about is Solemn Judgment. So, uh, some people think this is Widmore, but my logic with Centurion is I like Widmore. Like, if Widmore means that I don't lose the game, like I'm just gonna play this card. Uh, I only went into time once. Uh, well, I went to time. I went into time twice. It was in top four, which is where I lost, and it was uh on my round four feature match, which was against former Deadman Kingdom champion Michael Rivera. Um, I won that game in time versus Michael, and I lost the top four to Emmanuel Echeverria. Um, but going back to Solemn, uh, naturally I try to play very quick with this deck, and in testing I've noticed that I just don't go into time with this deck. Like a lot of duels are just decided on like one or two turns. There are some scenarios where that grind game will happen. Like in my top eight, I did went into a massive grind game against the Centur-ION mirror match, but I ended up winning 2-0. Shout outs to David Ruiz from Money Glitch. So I just pretty much arrived at the conclusion where if I have the Solemn and I can do like I do my lockout combo with Calamity, or do like or just keep deck lockdown on board, or I have my place with stand up when base deals. Um, and I don't have to worry about getting evenly matched. I don't have to worry about like getting fully blown out. Then so be it. Like I don't regret this choice. I think I did not see this card enough, but the games where I did see it, I pretty much just won. Like it just was really good for a deck like this one. Um, but I think that's it for the main deck. I guess we can talk about the extra deck at the very at last, and then we'll talk about the tournament experience as a whole. At least the Man Kingdom one, because I already covered Wii Box and Titan Games. So Scarlet was my only Synchro 8. Um, that could have been. It was between this Cypher Lord Omega or Tenji Berserker, and I just felt like the two other options are a little bit weaker. Like the Tenji Berserker was pretty much one of the better ones, but I like having the ability to board wipe in a simplified game state. Um, it's a card that it's very easy to make. I did win one game just burning my opponent like for 1,500 life points when they had like 900, and that game was very significant because if I gave them another turn, they would have just bounced back. So, uh, like, Scarlet came up. Uh, MVP of the extra deck, besides Legatia, obviously, I think goes to Chaos Angel. I think, like, I won like 4 games where I probably would have lost if I didn't summon Chaos Angel. The protection effect came up uh, like 3 times. I just had duels where I just had the Legatia on board. They tried to like stop the Legatia and like with a monster effect, and I just go. He's protected by the Chaos Angel. Because I use Primaire as a material. Um, Another really cool thing about Chaos Angel, and the other reason why it's really really good in this deck, is because it gives you the ability to use stand up Centurion without needing a tuner. Pretty much, Druisworm plus Trudea makes the Chaos Angel possible, and that gives you 2 disruptions on one card, even if they keep you out of the Primera loop. A lot of people will just not think about the Chaos Angel and just be like in a position where they feel naturally safe because you do not have a tuner on board. And then you just do stand up, you summon Chaos Angel, and then they just outright lose. So this card overperformed. This card, like, it won me the mirror match. It won me against Runic Orchest. It won me a game in Titan games against the Runic Bestial deck because they banished my 3 Primaris. So this actually did come up on that end. It won me again. It won me 2 games against Fire Kings. So yeah, really really good one. So let's talk about the Crimson Dragon Lock for a moment. Unironically, or ironically rather, the reason I lost my top 4 was because I forgot I had the window to make the Calamity Lock. Throughout the 3 tournaments that I played, I've only done the lock twice. Every single other game has been with either that level 10 synchros, multiple Legatias, or with my rank 8s. Which is another reason why I really like the Horus engine. Like the Horus engine just made it so I had rank 8s as part of my toolbox, as well as like the other monsters, and I don't have to rely on the Calamity Lock as much. Um, Needless to say, every game where I did Calamity Lock someone, I just outright won the duel. So I'm very thankful for that. But uh, like just playing this deck, I've noticed that like this lock is very very strong, and it's just one of the unfair factors this deck has. But at the same time, this deck can do very well without this. So I guess another MVP of the extra deck was Typhon. I summoned Typhon a lot. Like in every single game, Typhon came up. It won me a duel. Something really cool that I did was I summoned Sanafond a couple of times, and then I just Typhon over Sanafond because it naturally had more attack than everything else on the board. And so my opponent is under the lingering effect of Sanafond to not special summon from the graveyard, and they're under the Typhon lock. Um, which is something that people don't like people overlook. Like people just not don't notice that being a factor. Let's talk about Sanafon for a second, because I had some people. Shout out to Daniel Rodriguez from Got Milk Gaming. He was like, "Oh, you really love this card, and I don't get it." And um, I already made a video talking about this card. Just watch the Punk deck profile if you want. But uh, this card also performed. Like it won me 1 game against the Centur-ION matchup, the mirror match, because the guy had Phalanx in graveyard. They resolved that same turn, and they had Legatia like in the graveyard. So this pretty much just froze them from having Legatia access. And not only that, I already got rid of 2 of their Primaras, both with Druid's Worm and with Diddy Crow. So, and I got rid of a Trodea because of Chaos Angel. So half of their engine was gone, and they just had to play out the resource game in a way that was very very awkward for them. And another thing to know, when it comes to Xenophon is that um, the Fire King deck really, really struggles against this card. Like, um, you don't like you cannot do Flambers, you cannot do Fire Circle, you cannot do Kyrian Graveyard Effect, you cannot do Garunix Graveyard Effect. Um, you cannot do XYZ Garunix Graveyard Effect. This card cannot be destroyed by card effects, so you cannot Skyburn this away either. So, um, not MVP, but definitely a good card that really worked out in my side deck. Uh, okay, so let's talk about the tournament standings on the Deadman Kingdom event. So every winner of a Deadman Kingdom event has a round one bye, and that's like permanent. So I did have a bye. Uh, Round two was against Runic Orchest. That went to game three, very tight game. Um, my opponent did misplay game two. But yeah, on game three, um, I drilled them. They tried to do they went Girsu effect, and I ashed the Girsu. And ashing Girsu is a very big deal because if you ash the Harp Horror, they just make Galatea put the Harp Horror back, and then they just set a card. They just spawn a card for free. While if you just ash the Girsu, you don't have to worry about them even sending the Harp Horror. So they don't have an Orcus in the graveyard, and it just makes it very, very awkward for them. So that's how I won that matchup. Uh, Round three was against Rescue Ace. It was against uh, the Deadman Kingdom Tropical Island Challenge winner of the third one, uh, which is Jito, Hito. Um, that game, that was a 2-0. Very, very long game one. Basically, I had the Calamity Lock, um, and he was trying to maneuver his player priority with his trigger effects and his quick play spells in order to get as many resources before I successfully do Crimson Dragon. However, that was not enough. I still calamity locked him, and he had like four bodies on board, but I just had a lot of follow up with the Legatia, Bonds, and uh like another card in hand. So it was very, very rough for him. Um, Round four was against. So round three was Rescue Ace. Round four was Labyrinth. Shouts to Michael. He was the second winner, and he was the finalist. Uh, well, he was the finalist of the third one, and he was the finalist of the second one, which was the one that I won. And he was the winner of the first one, so the three-peat finalist. He played Labyrinth, and I won game three because he misplayed into the Horus cards. Like he tried to destroy two of my Horus names with two non-targeting destruction effects, one from the Labyrinth field spell and one from Lady Labyrinth, and he immediately just forgot that the King Sarcophagus just protects my Horus monsters from non-targeting destruction. So that was a very big deal, and it pretty much just won me the game. It won me the match. Um, Round five was against Infernoble Knights. Uh, I lost game one because of the interaction of Angelica, which is the level 5 synchro monster. I pretty much misplayed into it. It happened twice, and it pretty much just costed me the match. It did go to game three. One thing that I learned about Infernoble Knights is that Typhon is really, really strong against them. Like, like that's one deck that pretty much almost always will lose to Typhon if you have enough ways to break their board. One thing that I did against that matchup is I ended up on summoning Xenophon, and then I detached for Xenophon effect, and then I did the Sky Crisis. That avoids people from using. It avoids them from using Turpin effect. It avoids them from using. Uh, it avoids them from using Turpin effect. It avoids them from using the Ricardetto effect to reborn. Uh, it prevents Roland uh, from reborning, and I think that's it. It prevents Durandal's graveyard effect as well. So that interaction did come up. Um, r- Round 6 was against Fire Kings. I won that one. Uh, that game was very very close because uh, I he popped Baron from the deck, and he had Flamberge Dragon in his hand, and he had both Snake Eye Oak and Ash in the graveyard as well as Ponix. I had Call by the Grave for the Barong. He drew with Heat Soul, and the Heat Soul drew him into the Kirin, which made it so he had the full Flamberge combo. Uh, I'll talk about Flamberge in the future once we get closer to Phantom Nightmare, because that's going to be way more relevant on that regard. But yeah, really, really close game. I managed to snudge it out. Round 7 was against another Fire King, Charles to Glenn Camuñas. Uh, Pretty much 2-0. Not much to say. He played just standard Fire King stuff. Um, so, going into top 8, I faced the mirror match. I lost the die roll. However, there were three key cards that really just won me the duel. And like the number one key card that outright just destroyed the matchup was Druid Worm. Like, so in one game I opened Druid Worm, and in another game I opened Magnemwood, which just gets me to Druid Worm later. The second card that really was problematic for him was the Horus Monsters. I pretty much like outright just won the game with the Horus cards. Uh, he was not playing Horus in his list, and I was, and that just gave me a very very big edge. There was one situation where I had Baron the floor with Happy on board, and he had Fenrir, and he was put in a situation where if he banishes the Happy, he has no way to get rid of my Baron the floor, which means that the Baron the floor just going to stop his Primera from like resolving her effect. If they if I do negate with Baron, they have a second Fenrir, and then they have full Centur-ION access. So what I ended up doing was I let the Fenrir resolve and banished my Baron. And that made it so I grabbed both Druid's Worm and DD Crow from my graveyard to my hand with the Happy effect. And that pretty much just won me the duel, because they went like ATI in the end phase, and then I just went Druid's Worm to banish their last Primera, and then they went on my turn. They tried to do MF6, and I just banished it with the DD Crow. So that won me that matchup. Shout out to David. And that in top 4, I lost to the Infernoble player again. And the number one reason I lost is because he had a Fenrir on board, and I had Legatia with the standard setup, and I had deck lockdown on board. And he played around the deck lockdown, but I felt I was in a situation where if I tried to do like Crimson Dragon, any card in his hand that can just disrupt this, like for example, Forbidden Chalice, Super Polymerization, um, Forbidden Droplets, like enemy controller, that just outright would have just lost me the game. And I felt this was a natural risk. And the other thing that happened was I completely blanked out on Fenrir's interaction, and forgot to notice that Fenrir has no way to interact with this play unless it's just specifically to get rid of the hard red. Um, and if they get rid of the Legatia, then that's perfectly fine because I already had Centurion Bonds in my hand, and he was under deck lockdown. So it's like not much they can do after this monster is summoned with the lockdown on board. Knowing that just next turn this can just punch over the Fenrir and just burn my opponent for 24. But I did not do that play. I just ended up summoning a second Legatia instead, and that costed me a game because he really just had enough resources to play around like the double Legatia with deck lockdown. And and I pretty much just lost the time due to that. That loss was a bit unfortunate. However, I had amazing fun at the event. I think the deck overperformed. I think like moving forward, uh, this could be a deck that I keep playing even post Phantom Nightmare. I think this deck is very very promising. It has a lot of uh, it has a few weaknesses and choke points, but not enough people know them enough to like respect it. I feel like Calamity Lock is just very absurd. Uh, like I was talking to David Ruiz like after a tournament, and we both arrived at the conclusion where it doesn't matter how great the new Fire King support is. Like all eyes are the same under Calamity Lock. Same goes with the voiceless deck and what any other strategy. So that's pretty much it. Very very lengthy report. Very 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 long video. I just had a lot to talk about. Uh, Shout outs to like EJ Gaming. Shout outs to Deadman Kingdom for hosting the event. Shout outs to like all the fellow players I played throughout the week. Shout outs for everybody who lent me cards. Uh, Also, giveaway ends soon. If you are watching this video, today's the last day of the mat giveaway for the Nibiru mat. Uh, like, feel free to check it out and do whatever you want with that. But until next time, keep practicing and keep dueling.